Good morning. We're going to try something a little different today. It's not going to make much difference to you, but I'm going to do this before I go into the classroom and do it with them. We're going to talk about the Eightfold Path. So far, you've got the basic idea that you need to zero out your expectations. You need to do that because all existence is suffering. All suffering is caused by desire. And in order to end the suffering, you've got to end the desire. But Siddhartha gave us an 8-step program, I and on. So let's talk about I and on. The Eightfold Path is not, it's best not to talk about it as though it's a line. Like you do number 1 and then you do number 2. When you're all done with that, you do number 3. Any more than the 12-step program is a line for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a cluster, a circle around which all these different aspects are arranged, and you stand in the middle and you're constantly working them together. But we can think of the Eightfold Path as 3 separate, interrelated, but distinct aspects of how to go about building a selfless existence. The first 2 steps are right understanding and right goal. Right might not be the best word here. It's not like there's a wrong. It's like there's a fullness to it, a complete, this totality of understanding, a totality of goal. Somehow like that. Right understanding and a right goal. What's my motivation? Do I intellectually buy into the idea that suffering is caused by desire and that desire can be stopped? If I come up with that intellectual assent, that makes sense to me, then the next thing is, do I want to change it? Because a lot of people will say no. And if you don't intellectually understand it the same way and you're not interested in changing it, then the rest of the whole process doesn't make sense. But if you intellectually buy the idea that our lives are filled with suffering that's caused by desire and you want to stop it, then the rest of the Eightfold Path has 2 basic directions you need to move. One is outward, so right speech, right action, right vocation, and right effort are about changing your outside world. And then the final 2 are moving inward, right mindfulness and right concentration. Let's back up a little bit. Right speech, I'm going to do that at the end of this little segment here. Right action, it really involves everything. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. All those things we think of as ethics, you have to start paying attention to what you're doing. Walking away with the pen after you've finished signing the credit card slip, you need to do something about that. Fudging on your income tax, whatever. You need to begin to correct the way you relate to the outside world. You got to learn how not to lose your temper. We'll talk about that at length later. Right vocation, because some jobs are going to be really good for this and some jobs just simply are not. If you want to see yourself as selfless, what you're really learning to do is see yourself as interconnected with all reality around you. Every living creature is somehow a part of your experience, not you by yourself. And in order to get to that place, you've got to learn not to kill things, for instance. You don't step on bugs just because. You don't eat meat, and on and on and on. So that means certain vocations, you should be avoiding those. Being a butcher, being an exterminator, being a research scientist for a weapons development system for the United States government. Those are the kinds of things that lead you away from that sense of interconnectedness with all living reality. And then you also want a career that doesn't focus on all about me. So being an actor, yes, Richard Gere is a Buddhist. Steven Seagal is a Buddhist. But it's much more difficult in that kind of a world. Or being a politician, it's much more difficult to be a Buddhist and stand up in front of everybody and say, hey, pay attention to me. You want a career where you can end up losing yourself into that interconnectedness with others. Being a nurse is a great example. Being an elementary school teacher is another. There are lots of careers that allow you a selfless existence as opposed to the self-centered kind of existence. Let's see, where am I at? Right effort is all about making it a 24/7 process. This isn't something that can be done for a half hour in the morning and then move on. It's something that you need to continually be working at. It is a very difficult challenge. It doesn't happen in a day, and it doesn't happen in a week. In order for you to rewrite yourself, you're talking about almost a lifetime. The Dalai Lama says he's still working on it, and he's well into his 70s. So it takes a real effort. And then when we get down to those last two, right mindfulness and right concentration, we're talking about two very different aspects of the way our mind works. One is to become aware. The walking meditations we've been doing with the live class are an effort to get a sense of what it's like to be aware of the breezes, aware of the sounds, aware of the smells, aware of all the life that's around us, aware of the changes that are happening in the environment. And if you can do that outside you, you can begin to also be aware of you and what's happening with you. Notice things that people tend not to notice. And then right concentration is the way of moving inside. It's oftentimes thought of as meditation, but it's more than meditation. It's analysis. Meditation, you're quieting the mind, but only as a step to get you to where you analyze who you are. Good example. If I get angry, I can blame it on you. Or I can ask myself, what about this is making me angry? You get drunk, I get angry at you. And then I think, but lots of people get drunk. Why is it bothering me that you're angry at and that you're drunk? Why am I angry about that? And then I say, well, it's because you're in my class and you're disruptive. And then I sit there and say, but why am I angry about that? Why don't I just deal with it? Just do what needs to be done. Why anger? And then I think, well, maybe it's because I feel insulted as a teacher. And I say, really, that's what's going on here, is I feel challenged. Why does being challenged hurt me so? And I just keep going and analyzing. That's what right concentration is about. Why do I feel a need to be in control in a moment? Why do I feel the need to express my emotions? Whatever. Right concentration. Now, let's take a little side trip back down to that right speech thing. Let me show you how this stuff can work out in everyday life. When I was a kid, say 14 years old, terribly, terribly shy human being. If you've seen Big Bang Theory, Rajesh, how he couldn't talk to females, until this season apparently, that was me. And I thought, I'm never going to get a date this way, so I figure I have to do something about this. And I did what every self-respecting nerd in the universe would do. I went and got a book to tell me how to ask a girl out. The book I got was How to Pick Up Girls. It's still in print. It's been a long time. It's a dumb book. The first chapter says, first thing you need to do is learn how to open up a conversation. And so it gave you a bunch of pickup lines, nice pair of shoes, like to see those under my bed in the morning, that kind of stuff. I think that part could have been left out. But the second chapter, now that you got a conversation going, what do you talk about? This was good. It said, talk about her favorite subject, herself. All women, it said, have a favorite subject, themselves. Sounds kind of sexist, huh? Wait, it's actually true for men too. This is what our problem is. My favorite subject is me. Your favorite subject is you. Think about it. How often do you use the word I? A lot. I went to the store. I was going to get milk, and I couldn't find fat-free, so I bought 2%, and I came home, and I put it on my cereal, and I didn't like it. We use I as almost our number one word. And the odd thing about the way our mind works is as we talk, we hear it. And as we hear it, our brain processes it as though it's somebody else. You think a thought inside your head. Your brain processes that thought in one spot. Neurologically speaking, when you speak that same thought out loud, your brain processes it through another part. Your hearing goes to a separate part of your brain. This is why talking to yourself can be very, very helpful when you're trying to solve a problem. But it's also the part that creates the problem. I keep hearing that I'm somebody, so I must really be somebody. You're convincing yourself on a daily basis that yourself is what counts. How do you stop that? Go back to chapter 2. When you talk to people, instead of talking about yourself, get them to talk about who they are. people are like that. Get them to talk by asking a question, and you don't need to be an expert on everything. You don't need to be an expert on anything. You just need to know how to ask a question to get you started, and then listen to what they say so you know how to ask another one when they come to a pause. Go to a party, and a guy's got a big plate, and he's loading it up there at the buffet table with shrimp. And you go, "Wow, you like shrimp, huh?" Yeah. You ever see Forrest Gump? If he says yes, he says no, you got someplace to go with this. Then next thing you know, you ask him a question, he's going on and on and on and on and on, and you listen. And then as he's listening, you're thinking, hey, I could ask another question about that. That'd be kind of interesting to hear about. And when he stops, ask him that. So when you were in Minnesota, did they even have shrimp? And the next thing you know, he's off again. At the end of the evening, he goes home with his wife, and he says, you know that guy I was talking to at the buffet table? Incredible conversationalist. Get real. I'm a very good conversationalist because I let other people do the talking. Not in class, mind you, but in real life. This is important because it does three things. Number one, it stops you from reinforcing I. Number two, it encourages you to build compassion. You begin to see through the eyes of another human being. And number three, it can get you a job and it can make you money. Believe it or not, I got my job because when I went in for my final interview with the president of the college, instead of him asking the questions, I looked up and saw a baseball cap and I said, oh, wow, you're a Twinkies fan. It was Minnesota Twins. I lived in Minnesota when I was going to graduate school. And he goes, you know the Twinkies? And I said, yeah, I went to a lot of the games. I said, did you go to games up there too? And the next thing you know, he was talking. Most of the 15-minute interview was him talking about baseball. Baseball is a metaphor for education. Baseball is a metaphor for life. Baseball is simple joy. I just let him talk. I got a job. I had a student several years ago. Her name was April. April was a stripper. I knew this because one night I accidentally said during class break, so what do you do for a living? She says, I work at La Girls. Awkward. But a few weeks later, she came back to me and she said, you know that lecture you gave on right speech? I said, yeah. She goes, that was the best thing I ever heard. I tripled my tips. And I went, how? Well, she was always uncomfortable with her job. It was good for her because she could work a couple of days a week and make enough money to pay the rent and help do the stuff she needed for her daughter, who was little, and be able to go to school full time. April is now a medical doctor. But being uncomfortable, it was awkward. She took this lecture back to work. And guys would sit there at a table dance, and they'd be staring at body parts while she was dancing. So she'd ask them a question. So, where are you from? So, what are you doing here in town? So, you do business. What kind of work is that? Guys can't talk to those body parts. As they would answer the questions, their eyes would go up to her face. And then back down, and back up. And pretty soon, they were just having a conversation with her. And at the end of the dance, she tripled her tips. Because guys like to talk about themselves. So, it will help you stop being I. It will help build compassion. And it'll triple your tips if you ever become a stripper. That should be good enough, huh?